Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Drums webinar with Monotype on Your Type, Brand Design in the Modern Age. I'm Danielle Gibson from The Drum, and I'll be your host today. I'm extremely lucky enough to be joined by Carl Crossgrove, Senior Type Designer at Monotype, Rodney Abaugh and Brendan Murphy, Senior Partners in Design at Lippincott, as well as John Kwan, Senior Design Director at Lippincott. In an age of distributed content, brands are keener than ever to stand out to audiences. Across new social channels, at unique experiential spaces, and on new iterations of websites and print media, brands are investing in making sure their logos and associated iconography are instantly recognizable among a sea of competitors. The often overlooked need for consistency of branding is climbing the priority list for agencies and brands alike. Everything from consistency of colour to ensuring that every person with responsibility for deploying the brand has access to the correct font needs to be considered. But the reality is that it's easier said than done. This afternoon, we will get an opportunity to explore the challenges of ensuring brand consistency, best practice for deploying branding across an array of channels, and the tools needed to make that process as smooth as possible. Here at The Drum, we love to run an interactive webinar, so feel free to write any questions you have for our speakers today in the chat box at the side of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer them all. So without further ado, I'll let you guys take it away.
Awesome. And looking back at the identity manuals from the 60s through the 90s, we had the Helvetica era, the Frutiger era, and always trustworthy Adobe Garamond. The identity was more in the logo than the typographic voice, with fonts being more the neutral sidekick. We'd include serif and sans serif, with feet and without feet, using a serif for text-based materials such as letters, and sans was great for those display and signage type applications. As brands evolved and technology advanced, brand systems added a broader supporting cast to the logo, including typography to add more personality. But up until recently, most brands defaulted to the typographically neutral on screen, using Arial, Verdana, Georgia, or if you want to live dangerously, Calibri. But we're now at a stage where technology gives us a lot more choices. By thoughtfully selecting or designing a typeface, we give brands the opportunity to be and say so much more. The right choice can channel your brand purpose, speak to the brand's character, and express your design thinking. Subtle differences in form or weight can add up to a big shift in personality. And square or round, bold or thin, narrow or extended, the range of typefaces can have big impacts on functionality.
So with that in mind, we thought it'd be helpful to step back and take a look at all the options available to get to the right type solution for your brand. And it essentially breaks down into three possibilities. The first is, should we license a font from a commercial library? Do we modify a licensed font to meet our needs? Or do we commission something more bespoke? Deciding which of the three can be pretty overwhelming, but there are a number of factors you should keep in mind to help make the right choice. Let's take a look at the first option, selecting type from an existing library. This is by far the most common and practical solution. I mean, there are just so many typefaces available out there to choose from today. So it's ideal if you need to serve several, if you're looking for several distinct typefaces, you have a broad range of styles or many languages to support. It's also the best approach if you need to go to market quickly, and it's not that uncommon that when we're creating an identity program, especially if it's a merger, acquisition, or a spin-off of a company, there's a fixed day one and you have to meet that deadline, and there's often not a lot of time. So going to a typeface that's tried and true is the best approach.
With access to tens of thousands of typefaces that are already available, tested for immediate use, selecting from an existing library is the most common option for many brands. Reliably produced fonts provide brand managers with a high level of confidence. There's a robust selection of high quality type families already built for corporate branding use. An example is Hearst Publications. They have a large umbrella of brands that need frequent refreshing. The speed and scale of the applications is crucial, and an existing type library and the many products in a type library in a range of genres and moods are available for licensing at any scale. Each property in such a category can deploy its own type assets as part of a larger license with confidence in brand fidelity, performance, and access. Brands like Bazaar can maintain a house style across all media and devices.
The next category is developing a modified typeface, and these can certainly be a lot less time intensive than starting from scratch in terms of developing a custom typeface. Typically, we're doing this when we want to create a more personalized typeface to meet specific needs, or you found an existing font that suits your personality, but some of the characteristics aren't quite right. These can range from stylistic modification, such as contrast between thick and thin, and you want to change a component of a typeface, which is the one in Gill that looks like an eye, or the height of ascenders and descenders, which is something like Futura. It can be a technical enhancement, like hinting for screen, or a language or functional extension, adding non-Roman languages or condensed for things like legal text and packaging.
CONDÉ NAST is one group that needed to solve for a complicated and diverse set of font needs, but didn't have a lot of development time. So for a certain project, this is a stylistic modification. So they started with an existing typeface, and that kind of modification can be very minor, like just changing the shape of dots or the height of ascenders. In this case, with Fenice, for GQ, the design direction required that there was a new, more stylish display variant of the existing design. So in initial explorations, hairlines and serifs were thinned, curves were smoothed in transition areas, and a set of prototype letters was made in the new style and tested. But at the same time, the whole structure, proportion, voice of the original Fenice design was retained, because that was the desirable set of qualities. And then after testing, the character set was filled out in the new higher contrast style for use in all media at large sizes. For a technical modification, there are a number of technologies available that can enhance or speed the display of type in specific settings. Hinting, compression, tuning, and subsetting are invisible performance-enhancing additives, essentially, to a typeface for speed, compactness, and responsiveness. Combined, they can produce amazing results in a tiny footprint. Hinting, which is sort of cryptically referred to on the left-hand picture, it provides a control on the pixel appearance of stems and heights to provide consistency and clarity at small sizes and low resolution. compression, and subsetting are strategies for reducing the file size of a font, sometimes drastically, in order to reduce load times, potentially very dramatically. Tuning of a font can be an adjustment to how letter forms rasterize on different screen technologies and in different specialized environments for optimal contrast, brightness, crispness, regularity. And another kind of extension or modification of a font could be a language extension. This type of modification expands the linguistic and therefore the geographic coverage of communications for an enterprise. So you would start with an existing typeface, but new suites of characters can be added to support additional geographies and audiences. Native linguistic and design expertise extend the reach of an existing design.
Third category is investing in a custom typeface, and there's many reasons and opportunities to lean into custom typeface design. And we as a firm have gone from 0 to 1 to 3 of these a year. Really makes sense when you have a unique tone of voice that needs an equally unique visual expression. You're looking for something that will build unity across all your channels and touch points. This is, ever more challenging as the digital media explodes. Like, how do you look the same in print versus at home and versus on your mobile device? How do you have a high volume of customer interactions and you want to ensure a message looks its absolute best across all the platforms? Or you're making a substantial long-term investment in your brand and you want the fonts that you would use for many years. Most typically, we're doing these for large-scale, either national or multinational clients where there's more time and a broader understanding of the economic impact. And there's also, like with these larger clients, there's more desire to create that singular language that gives all its agencies, a focus in terms of talking the individual brand voice.
So an example of where we've done this is for Southwest. Southwest is a low-cost airline. It's the largest domestic carrier in the United States, and we worked with Monotype to create a custom typeface to complement the new brand program. Southwest is known for its exceptional customer service, in addition to low prices. So the brand idea for the airline is captured in the heart symbol. From the form of the heart, we've derived the basic characteristics for the typeface. What you see in the heart itself is where there's a change in direction that's reflected by a simple sharp point, and from that point, the line gently arcs into a full round curve. The typeface that resulted from those characteristics follows very simple geometric proportions. There's minimal contrast between thick and thin, so it has a very modern and approachable look.
And as we develop the full suite, we'll continue to look for opportunity to inject unique brand qualities. So in this case, along with the baseline, blunted spurs and accentuated vowels enhance the playful quality, the character of the letter forms. And beyond just letters, for punctuation has a larger, the full circular form, which create a friendly and useful look.
Set in text altogether, the full suite of characters gives the typeface that brand voice, that friendliness. Each smaller detail contributes to the quality. Because the eye scans the top of letters when reading primarily, spurs are retained in these lowercase letters to lend structure that aids readability. But the aforementioned spurless join, the sharp juncture on bottom joins of the letters convey a modern and slightly informal feeling, so reiterating that friendly quality from the brief.
So in result, the typeface has a plenty of personality, but it needs to still function very clearly in a variety of applications, from small digital screen as you see here to a large format printed banner, airport signs, and billboards.
So what goes into developing a custom typeface? And there's many paths to creating one. Obviously, the capability may be in-house with the client. Clients can go direct to a font house like Monotype. And then, last but certainly not least, you could work through an agency like Lippincott to develop the brand typeface. The first stage of any project is brand research, and really this is the most crucial stage of the process. It starts with a deep dive into the functional requirements. Where and how will the font be used? What channels, what languages are needed, etc. Is it to be used more as a display use or used more universally in terms of headlines and text? And here we're looking at how we really express the brand's character and unique voice. What design cues will we build on or build from, such as the Southwest Heart. And in developing the design brief, we're creating mood boards to establish a shared language for discussion with client and type design partners like Monotype. We're doing some very light sketching and jointly establishing the core design principles, codifying the functional requirements. Where will it need to operate?
When we get into the third stage, the design proposal and client review, we begin with a selection of key characters, and we start the design exploration based on those in response to the design brief. The type designers, the brand designers are working collaboratively to translate the design language from the brief into some sample letter forms. The scope of the project is going to have defined the number of styles, weights, and widths that are required, so that's all taken into consideration in that process. And explorations are then shared with all stakeholders. That's an important part of the process because it's necessary at this point to make sure we're thoroughly understanding how the typeface is going to work functionally and does it meet all of the requirements that we've set out. After the initial review, we then have feedback from the team, and that gets back to, supplied back to the full design team to work for them. Moving into design development, design is a very iterative process, so modifications to the design proposal then lead into refinements and additional reviews. That continues until both the form of the letters and the concept that we began with, that we're driving from the brand voice and just the brand idea itself, really coincide. Once there's sign-off on the design direction, we then have the full expansion of all weights, styles developed to the specified character set.
In the production and quality assurance phase, font engineers check all the weights, widths, and styles for character set consistency and completeness, font names, character widths, heights, kerning, and open type features. If hinting is required also to optimize for low-res situations, it also happens during these production and QA steps. And for a final delivery, after rounds of testing, fully functional custom fonts are delivered. So for any of these types of projects, there are a lot of different variables that play against each other. The simplest you could consider are usage, time, and cost, but there are many others. and each we go into a type development project wanting to collect information about basically the scope of the project, the number of weights, number of styles, is italic included, what's the language support required, what are the intended native media or technical applications, uses, distribution range, how exclusive is the design intended to be, what kind of deadline is required to be adhered to, and any possible specific technical requirements for implementation, like testing in a specialized hardware or software setting. So for any size of typeface development project, it's worthwhile to have experts handling each phase and appropriate attention and review on the client side to give the best results.
So much, everyone. That was really interesting to look into, brand design in the modern age, discovering best practice for ensuring consistency. Now we have some time to go through some questions for you. So, do you have a go-to method for finding and selecting a library typeface that matches a brand's identity and voice? Lippincott, do you want to take the lead in that?
Sure, and there's a couple of considerations here. I think firstly, functional. What's the range, as Carolyn and Rodney mentioned, what's the range of languages, media channels we need to address? If it's a brand that has a lot of legal text or packaging, do we need a font family with a condensed style? Secondly, the brand's formal design language and brand character. How does it look and feel and sound as a person? How does it relate to its audiences across a range of communication intents? As you think about like promotional needs, educational needs, or when you get into things like support needs.
So, can you share the cost and what's typically included with modified and custom typefaces? Carl, how about we start with you?
Yeah, it's everyone would like to be able to have a simple equation to refer to for pricing, but it really depends on all the different variables that we talked about, the specifics of the project. If there's a very small change, like something, we talked about a little bit of punctuation or one or two numerals getting a change, that's obviously going to cost considerably less. If you have a custom design with multiple language extensions or multiple weights, then obviously the cost is higher. It's really that's why it's so important to capture the scope of the project, because each variable figures into that pricing. And custom projects really are they're customized on every level. The naming of the fonts, every variable is something that clients need to address.
Brilliant. So can you describe the collaboration dynamics of a brand, agency, and foundry all working together? What does the brand agency monotype relationship look like?
Yeah, I can take that, and then Carl can jump in and talk on the Monotype Foundry side. But certainly the most important thing in our mind to get right is to have clarity on the roles and responsibilities, understanding what each party is going to bring to the table, and setting out with that very clearly in everyone's mind before we start the process. I can tell you that on the client team side, they are mainly going to be focused on risks to the business. So, the questions they're going to come up with are going to be around licensing and IP, you know, who owns what, are they covered? They'll want to know if the new font is going to potentially break their system. You know, very important when you're dealing with digital or any brand that's got a high level of interaction with customers in a digital environment, high transactions online. They're going to want to make sure that there are going to be no technical issues with the font that's developed. On the agency side, from our standpoint, you know, we're very focused on the brand expression, how the typeface is going to reflect the voice of the brand. We're going to be interested in how it works in all of the various environments, as Brendan mentioned, from out of home, small digital screens, in packaging, legal sign-off, like just in every place that it can possibly exist, making sure that the typeface is going to function properly.
Yeah, and I would add from the side of the Foundry, I'm in total agreement about the points here about having roles clearly defined and considering these issues. And Monotype is a type foundry, so we don't handle the other components that Lippincott or an agency does. So Lippincott's responsible for many more moving pieces in a rebrand for something like Southwest, where there's, you know, livery and colors and so many other concerns. So it's a little bit of a microcosm at Monotype of the bigger project.
Great. Well, thank you. We'd just like to say a special thanks to our partners, Monotype, and we hope you tune in again soon. You can see our upcoming webinars by visiting thedrum.com/topics/webinar. Thanks very much.